I have received a message requesting to talk about the sila, the importance of sila or virtue for our spiritual journey. And it is an important topic. We all think, oh, that's just, so simple. I already know. Why do we want to talk about it? But in this day and time, there are quite a lot of things that go around in the spiritual circles. Yeah, even there are some monastics who say that it is not important to, take care of your sila or virtue. They say just if you're smart, if you can understand the Dhamma, and it is with, the knowledge that you can get enlightened. But Buddha never said anything like this, right? So it is important. And there are some people who are not well versed with the teachings, who have not read the suttas, who have not is not aware might believe that. Yeah. So this is why it is important sometimes to reflect when you understand where and how it works for this path, then we understand why it is important, right? So before I get into virtue, let's talk about what are we doing on this spiritual path? What is enlightenment? Yeah. So the word in Pali for enlightenment is nibbana. Yeah. Nibbana means switch off. For anybody who speaks Sinhala, the Sinhala term is nivana. And the Sinhala word is nivanna, means you usually say switch off or put off a fire or things like this. So it is extinguishment, yeah? So what do we have to extinguish? Usually you extinguish a fire, right? So are we burning then? The Buddha says enlightenment. So it's switching off the fire, going out of the fire. So it's nice reflection. So we are actually, according to the teachings of the Buddha, burning with 11 types of fires. Not one, not two, but 11 kinds of fires. Now think for a moment. How do you feel when you have lots of passion or like lots of lust in your mind? Strong lust. It burns you, isn't it? It's kind of a sensation of burning. Even your hunger, yeah? Even when you're hungry, it's a form of burning. Even small desires, they still burn us. Yeah, just think about a time if you've seen something that you really, really like in the shops, but you didn't buy, but you really want it. It burns you, but much more, so many other things as well. So, raga, yeah, that is desire, burns us. Dvesha, that's the second one. That is ill will, negativity, irritation, anger, all of those things. And that is very clear. When we have those, we know we are burning, we are on fire. Angry feelings are like burning. The third one is that ego or delusion. And delusion, a large part of this ignorance is this idea we think that there is somebody here and there are all these things belonging to oneself and under the control of oneself. So this idea of sense of self. But the idea of burning comes very clearly when we lose control, when we realize, I mean, we never have control, but when we realize that we can't control people, things, our life, then also we start to burn. But also, really, our ego, which is our big sense of self, right? The conceit or ego. Because especially if tries to give you, somebody else tries to give you some advice on your professional area, you know, it comes like, who are you to tell me I know? You know, so when we have this kind of feeling, it is actually burning. It's a feeling of burning, right? So our ego, when it gets challenged, it burns. So raga, dvesa, moha, these are the three big fires, but everything else are also big fires. So then the next one is jati, being born. And you wonder, I mean, we celebrate birthdays, so what's wrong with that? But once you're born, that is when we have these fires, right? If it is because we are here, that we have fires of desire, fires of, ill will, fires of ego, and all these other problems. So birth is a fire. Old age, the suffering, that is like burning. Sickness, we definitely know when we are sick and suffering in pain, it's like burning. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. All of these things are fires. So we are constantly burning. Sometimes the burning is great, sometimes it is less. Sometimes we have actually got used to this burning. So it is burning and it is hot, but we have just sort of got used to it, right? But when you go on retreat, when you start to meditate, when you have that kind of time, when our hindrances and defilements starts to subside, it really is a feeling of cooling down, yeah, becoming peaceful, becoming still. It is stages of cooling down the mind. That is how we feel it, yeah. So chilled person, somebody who is chilled, yeah, that's quite a nice term. It's different to somebody who is cool in that modern language. We say somebody who's cool is like somebody who's fashionable, maybe. But when you say somebody who's chilled, relaxed, is that somebody not easy to agitate, irritate. They don't burn so easily. Yeah. Even if you say things to poke them, it takes a lot of effort before you get a reaction. And certain other people, you only have to open your mouth, even the word hasn't come out, they already start to fire, right? Burn. So you can see, how these defilements, the hindrances, we are constantly burning. So the path, the entire path is about cooling down, extinguishing these fires. So it's easy to understand. It's not something unfathomable, something so difficult, this enlightenment, you don't know what you're doing. It's not like that. In the Buddhist spiritual path, you understand what it is about. So it is about cooling down and completely eliminating defilements, hindrances of our mind. So when we have that in mind, then we understand the power of sila. So think about it. What is the first precept? The first precept is to refrain from killing. Look at your mind state anytime if you have killed even a small insect, if that has happened in your life ever. It's not a nice feeling, right? The bigger the animal, the more effort you need to put, the more burning as you do it. I mean, and killing of a human being would be terrible. So killing. So you can see how refraining from killing is directly related to this cooling down process, or opposite. If we don't, right? If we continue on, our mind is not at ease. It's going to burn much more. So the second precept is not stealing. Yeah, again, when we steal, if you have even stole something really small, like a pencil or something, or fruit from a neighbor's garden or something, it still doesn't feel good afterwards. Yeah. So stealing, that's why we refrain from it. Sexual misconduct, adultery and all of these behaviors, being unfaithful for your partner. Yeah. Again, these are really, really burning things. And refrain from telling lies. Again, what happens to your mind when we lie, let alone lying, even if we snap back at somebody? Even our voice is a little bit sarcastic. Later on, we don't feel good, right? So these are forms of burning. So that's why we refrain, yeah? And then, of course, intoxication, taking intoxicants and, alcohols and things like this, because at that time our mindfulness is low, and you could do any one of those things because you don't even know exactly how you're doing what you're doing properly. So they also turn into burning. So that's why 5 precepts, if you don't keep them, if you do the opposite, if you are killing, if you're stealing, if you know, do sexual misconduct, lie, and take intoxicants, how on earth are you going to be able to cool down? So it's obvious, isn't it? But I don't know how some people can think that without sila, by finding out a very smart meditation technique, that you can get enlightened. It's not possible because you have regrets and remorse and your mind burns. So that is why 5 precepts is the very basic requirement. And it is quite obvious, even a little kid could understand why it is important. But it is more than that. Sila or virtue is more than that. It's not just about refraining, but it is also doing the opposite, yeah, doing the right action. So instead of not killing, but also giving life, saving lives. So if anybody has saved even a little insect, how beautiful your mind feels. No, it's really nice feeling when you save life, give life, help life. Even somebody who is dying, you offer some help, or you give donations or something to buy medicine, anything to support life. If you have done any of these things, when you recollect those memories, you feel really good. Your mind gets really uplifted, really, really uplifted. When you even make somebody happy, even to that degree, it feels great. And instead of stealing, giving, the generosity, the opening of your heart, so very beautiful. Yeah, so very beautiful. There are so many stories of generosity. Yeah, but one I just heard very recently from Ajahn Brahm. He wrote a message. This is supposed to be a little bit of a secret, so don't tell Venerable Nirodha just yet. I'm sure she's not going to listen to this Dhamma talk before her birthday, but of course her 80th birthday is coming. So of course we have done a little book. And Ajahn Brahm has written a beautiful message in that he mentioned about a beautiful incident of open-handed giving generosity in a beautiful way, where this was when she was still a layperson about to become a nun. So she was settling all of her business, closing down all of her accounts, giving everything away. So, I mean, there's lots of big generosity that happens, but this special one happened on the day where the BSWA had their 30th anniversary. So, big celebration. At the end of the celebration, as things were getting packed, one of the security guards came running to talk to Ajahn Brahm. And then he was almost in tears, tears of joy, as she was pointing to a lady and saying, this lady, and she was pointing to Venerable Nirodha when she was a layperson and saying, this lady handed me a large bag of cash. I was raising funds for a charity by the side of the road, and I saw this lady coming out from the bank carrying this big bag, and she just gave the whole thing into my hand and walked off without even asking for any identification, any receipt, nothing. Beautiful, like just giving away to a charity, to a stranger for something, the whole amount. It would have been a lot of money. He said it was a large amount. I've never, ever received any amount anywhere near like that for a charity like that. Just open-handed, beautiful giving, not telling what you should do with the money. You give no control, no expectations in return, no thank yous, nothing. Beautiful. There are so many stories. This is just came to mind, but there are so many. So the act of giving, it doesn't have to be large amount of money, anything. Even if you give a smile, a kind word, little act of service, even if you shared, bite from whatever you were eating with somebody, gave something so beautiful. Yeah, really, really nice. So opposite actually elevates your mind, gives so much joy states. Actually, when those joy states are there, the fires are way down below. Your mind is actually cool. Yeah, so you can see the power of virtue, not to underestimate sila. Sila is very, very powerful in cooling us down and bringing our mind into the right state. And of course, instead of, um, not only just refraining from sexual misconduct, but being very kind, caring in your relationships, being very honest, upright, and having that trust, give trust, being a trustworthy partner to your loved ones. It's such a beautiful gift. Isn't it nice that our family, when we can trust them, we have that sense of trust? It's so beautiful. The distrust causes so much pain, anguish, and despair for people in the world, especially in the modern world where access to people has become so easy because of all social media. You can access anybody so easily by touch of a button, right? You can access and share all these things so easily, and it's so dangerous. This is where there's so much extramarital affairs and all kinds of things happening. Such a terrible thing to do, yeah, to your loved ones, because you don't want that. So, and in the same way, you don't want to do that to the other person. So instead, being honest, being upright and straightforward with your actions and giving that trust is such a beautiful thing. When you are a trustworthy person, when you're known to be a trustworthy person, truly, you feel really good inside. Yeah, it's really, really beautiful. And of course, instead of lying, saying the truths. And also, saying things in a nice way, kind way, speaking words that goes to the heart. Even that idea is so nice, right? There are sometimes people, you meet them from time to time. When these people speak, it's like so sweet, so nice. You feel so good. You feel like this is how I feel when find somebody like that. I feel like I want to keep them in my pocket. You want to hang around with these people who are so gentle, so kind, so caring, loving the way they speak. So not only they are honest, and also they don't talk rubbish. They actually talk something that is useful, skillful, helpful, kind, wise, beautiful speech. So that is the opposite. So doing that is really nice. And of course, in taking intoxicants and alcohol and living your life half asleep in that kind of, very, very drunk kind of state, which you don't know, no mindfulness. It's so beautiful when you have aroused mindfulness. Yeah, when you start meditating, when the mindfulness starts to grow, is so much energy in your body and in your mind. It's an incredibly beautiful state to be. You all know that. Even little bit of stillness, how great you feel if you did in the right way and allow yourself to become still. It feels really good. And imagine when the mind becomes, much more awake, alert, and sharp. It's such a nice feeling, energetic. So and then you compare the time, if you ever have been drunk and under intoxicant, what an awful terrible state that is. These are burning states, and the other is cool. So you can see the direct relationship of even the basic five precepts, but much more than that. It's not just about the precepts. Keeping the precepts is sometimes easy because it's about refraining, like I said. But you can still, have not a nice mind because it's not breaking a precept to frown at somebody, right? The precept doesn't say you can't frown. You can pinch somebody, you can kick somebody, you can say very sarcastic things, and you haven't broken your five precepts. But how would your mind be if you were doing those things? Not very nice, right? Not very nice at all. So this is why. So precepts is not just about keeping the five precepts, because there are some people that say, oh, I keep my five precepts really well. But they can't meditate, and they're not nice people to be around with. Sometimes they even have so much pride of, I am a Buddhist and I keep my five precepts. But you sometimes wonder what kind of person you are, because you can still do many things that are harmful and hurtful for yourself and others. So, sila or virtue is much more than just the precepts. Yeah, it's much, much more than that. So the Sila, the way that the Buddha explains to his 7-year-old little son, Rahula, is like this. He says, how do you feel when you lie? Yeah, it feels no good. She said, what's the purpose of a mirror? The Buddha asked. The purpose of the mirror is to see your image, right? So he says, in the same way, using your mind, you can reflect and see your mind and see how you feel. So he instructs little Rahula. So before you engage in some action, consider this, reflect and see. When I do this action, is it going to be harmful to myself? Is it going to cause harm to the other or harm to both? Sometimes we don't know. So while you're doing it, again reflect and see, how is it going? Is it harmful to me? Is it harmful to the other or to the both? If it is, he says stop. And if you didn't know and you completed the task, after having done the job, whatever you did, reflect back and see, how did it go? Was it harmful to myself? Did it cause any harm to the other or to the both? Even a little kid as young as 7 can actually understand whether there was harm in there. So if there is harm, then don't do it again. Same goes to the speech. Before you open your mouth and speak, see how you're going to speak, what you're going to say. Is that going to cause harm to yourself, others, and both? While you're speaking, notice. This is important when you learn to watch body language, right? So then you can see how is the other person receiving what you're saying. Then you can see, is it harmful or hurtful? Or after having said, sometimes we can't stop. Our mouth sometimes speak before us. It's as if it has a life of its own sometimes. Yeah, it speaks very fast. So never mind if that happened, then afterwards reflect and see. And then you can make a determination. You can tell yourself, okay, next time I'm going to try better, not speak in this way, because it is not good. It is harmful. And with the mind as well. This is the important part. Most people who are listening to this talk, or many people in the world, they are quite careful with their actions by body and with their speech, because they know other people can see. At the very least, they don't want other people to think about themselves as bad. So therefore, they try to do the right thing. Even if they don't want to, they still try, just because of their reputation, even because of their ego. But when it comes to the mind, of course, people can be quite heedless. Yeah, you can think what you want, however you want, for however long you want it, because you think nobody can see, so it's all right. But whatever you think, whatever you ponder, that is what later on breaks into speech and action. So really dangerous, yeah? You wonder sometimes, why did I speak like that? Why did I do like that? That's because you've been thinking about these things, fantasizing about these things, or however way you want to say it, but in your mind. So mind is very powerful thing. So restraint of the mind, the virtue or the sila of the mind is really, really important. Yeah, that is where we need to really be careful. If you look after that, the body and speech will be okay as well. So mind is important. But not only that, we have to also have a little bit of, shame and fear about the mind too, because even though most people around us may not be able to read our mind, there are some well-practiced people, with good meditation, who can read other people's mind. But also the Buddha says, also all these other non-human beings, including especially the devas, they can read your mind. They know what you're doing. They are all around us. According to the Buddhist cosmology, we are not just here alone with just our human beings and animals. That's not the only kind of beings. There's so many other realms of existence, all higher as well as lower ones. Yeah. So all of them are all around us as well. Even ghosts, your family members who passed away, if one of your family members, your parents or uncles or aunties or grandparents have passed away, how would they feel like if they can know what you're thinking? Think like that when if you start thinking unwholesome ways, doing unwholesome things. So taking care of our mind is really, really important, and it is also directly related to meditation. If we didn't take care of our mind, if we didn't restrain our mind, meditation is really hard, because that's what it costs, much more than things that we said and do. Also, all of those things as well. So that is why it is really important if you want to cultivate meditation. It's not about the technique. There could be some techniques to take you to some kind of level of meditation, but it stays there. It doesn't go any further than that, because meditation is a natural process, not done through effort. So following really strong techniques which are forced and concentrated or something like this are only very temporary still states that doesn't last, not sustainable, doesn't get deep. The natural process come from a mind that is bright and sharp and energetic to begin with, due to the sila, due to being a good person, due to doing the right things. Yeah, being good feels good is my line that I really like to remember. Being good feels good, and that feels good feeling, that energy of the mind, is what empowers our meditation and what takes it quite far. So sila is a part of your fuel, together with generosity. Really, generosity is also part of sila, right? It is giving, the opposite of stealing. So it is there. And people wonder, where is metta? So metta is there when you are not harming, not killing, all of those acts. The metta is right there as well. The feelings of loving kindness, friendship, care, all of that is when you actively practice sila. So sila, remember, is much more than just the 5 precepts. It's really who you are as a person and how you live your life. And that I shared with you that Ambalattika Rahulovada Sutta, that's the one that the Buddha talked about to his son. But another place where the Buddha gives in a nutshell the whole spiritual path, this comes in the Sakkapanya Sutta. This is in Digha Nikaya. That is the long discourses, sutta number 21. It's a really, really long, beautiful sutta, but in there, the Sakka, that is the Lord of the Devas. So this is not a human being, but the Buddha. One of the qualities of the Buddha is Satta Deva Manussan, and that means he was a teacher for both the gods and humans. Gods in the sense all the devas or angels, so however you want to understand, as well as to human beings. So there are many, many discourses where the Buddha was giving teachings to these beings, and Sakka is the king of this realm, and he comes down and asks very nice questions to the Buddha. And he is also quite a wise person. And in this discourse, I'm not going to go through the whole series. I have done this in previous Dhamma talks, but I want to remind you, the Sakka asks, so what kind of practice does one do? How do you do this practice to, end all these problems of war, of ill will, negativity, all problems in the world? So how do you practice? Essentially, he's asking, how do you do the spiritual practice? And because he's wise, the Buddha gives a very concise, simple kind of answer that you have to expand yourself. And he says to the Sakka, in your pursuit of happiness, right? That's what we all want, right? We all have our pursuits of happiness. So we are constantly looking for ways to bring happiness to our life. In your pursuit of happiness, whatever you do by actions, by body, speech, and mind, if you notice as you do them, your unwholesome mind states are increasing and wholesome mind states are decreasing, then he said, don't do it. and in your pursuit of happiness as you engage with body, speech, and mind. If your wholesome mind states are increasing and unwholesome mind states are decreasing, then he says, continue. This is a good advice, right? Sometimes you wonder, oh, I don't know enough suttas. I don't know whether this is right or wrong. Should I do this or shouldn't I do this? And constantly feel like you have to ask somebody or look up. But this is quite simple, right? This is a good way to understand whether what you are doing, why you are doing, and how you are doing, whether it is in line with the teaching. So it's not about even what you are doing, but how you are doing. A very nice example is like usually people think like, bringing dana, cooking dana, and bringing dana, that is the food or the meal to the monastic, the midday meal, is a good thing. It's a wholesome thing, and it is, right? It is. The Buddha says also, because it's people who teach and help others. We are also like doctors of the mind, right? So we are helping other people. So to support us or the monastics is a nice thing to do. So the act itself is a wholesome thing. But how do you do it? Let's see, like early morning, you wake up and you start cooking, and then something burns and something topple over and fall and break, and your kid is screaming. Have you gone through such a situation as you're preparing your midday meal to bring to the monastery? I'm sure you are familiar with what I'm saying for some of you, and you start to get a bit irritated, agitated. Then start to, your speech isn't great. You're shouting and screaming and more problems, and you're still cooking the meal, and you come in a rush to the monastery. But what is the state of your mind? Yeah. Unwholesome states have gone up, wholesome states have gone down. Even fundamentally, the thing that you're doing is good, but how you're doing is not good, right? So this is the thing. So it's really nice to know. So whatever you are doing, even if you're helping out with a fundraising project or organize something, the thing that you're doing might be really, really good. But how are you doing it? Yeah. While you're doing that, if your negative states are increasing, then you have to review and change and do it in a way that wholesome state starts to come up. So what you are doing, why you are doing it. So sometimes you might be doing it for the wrong reasons. You might want to be known, become popular, to be, known as this generous person. Or maybe you have ulterior motivations of, getting some other benefits by doing this. Then it's not a really good state, right? It's all kind of defiled. So that's why. So this is Sati Sampajanya, mindfulness and clear comprehension, is what tells you what are you doing it, why are you doing, how are you doing, are my wholesome mind states increasing, unwholesome mind states decreasing? Then whatever you are doing, why you are doing, how you are doing, will be in alignment with the teachings of the Buddha. So nice to know, right? So you can figure out to a large degree how to conduct yourself throughout the day, throughout your life, in a way that is in line with the spiritual path. So this is really helpful, but this is all. So the large part of what we do is related to sila. Because outside, when we are doing things, how you conduct and your mind, this is where we take care of ourselves. And then the rest is when we sit down in formal meditation. That is when we do the samma sati, that is the mindfulness, and samma samadhi, the stillness or the meditation. So how you live. So the first 6 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path are all related to, not the first 6, the Samma Ditti, right view, is aspect of wisdom, but all the other factors are related to Sila. So it is a big part, and the Buddha says the only path that leads to enlightenment is the Noble Eightfold Path. So right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, also even the right intention, yeah, nekkhamma, avyapada, avihingsa, that is renunciation, non-harming, and non-cruelty. non-harming or non-ill wills and non-cruelty. So these are intentions. So all of these things are related to sila. So sila or virtue is a basis. And the Buddha says, if you want to look up Satipatthana Sangyutta in the Sangyutta Nikaya, that is the connected discourses. There the Buddha says the cornerstones for establishing mindfulness is right view and virtue. So without a right view and without virtue, that is sila, right mindfulness, samma sati, is not possible. So if somebody says, oh, no need of sila, I'm just practicing satipatthana now, it's not going to really happen properly. Yeah, it's not going to bear fruit because the Buddha says. And you can understand why, because it's very simple to understand, not so complicated. How, if you don't keep your sila, how your mind state is not in a right place. Yeah, so you can't do that. And without some mindfulness, there is no stillness possible. So it's not so hard to understand the importance of virtue. Yet, most of us are lacking in this. We have much more room to refine and make it better. So if our meditation isn't really biting, if it is not going really well, the place that we have more work to do is not putting in more like willpower, not by like really, doing any other kind of thing, but more look into your sila. How can you live your life in a way that is much better, much kinder, much caring, much loving, much giving with wisdom and generosity? Yeah. This is where the practice really begins. This is also where you start to feel good. You feel really nice. But not only that, you are ready anytime to die because death can come anytime, right? Death can happen anytime. But if you have lived your life to your very best ability, it will not be perfect because it's hard. If we are not fully enlightened, we have our defilements, and the nature of the defilements is for us to do stupid things from time to time. So it's not about doing the stupid things, it's about what you do afterwards, and that is to learn from them and and making determination to not try to do it, finding out ways to change your ways, and also forgiving yourself and forgiving others. So this is really important. So this not having regrets in your mind is the starting point of meditation. We have spoken about this many times. The working of the meditation psychology, the Buddha says, if you want a reference, Na Chetana Karaniya Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya 10.3. And there are many, maybe 20, 30 suttas giving the same sequence in a way. And this is how meditation works. So when you sit to meditate, the most important thing is that you do not have regrets. So again, direct relationship to sila. Because if you have not been keeping your sila, there will be regrets and remorse in our mind. Yeah, our conscience is going to not be happy. Yeah, so, but if you rather lived your life well, of course, then there is no regrets and remorse. Then the mind has gladness, that uplift. That's the energetic mind, the feel-good feeling in your mind and body. So when you sit to meditate with that kind of feeling, the Buddha says you don't have to exert any will and say, may my mind have joy or rapture. It happens as a matter of course. Because when you have gladness in the mind with no regrets and remorse, instead you have glad mind, the present moment is pleasant. So when the present moment is pleasant, you are able to stay here with your meditation object. So as you stay with the object, because the very reason why the mind runs into past and future is because the present moment is a lot of suffering. That is because we haven't lived our life well enough. That's the reality. If you are doubtful about it next time, face it and see why do you feel a sense of suffering. And you will notice, you will discover that is because there are things that are not that great. That's why. But that's okay. The whole path is about slowly, slowly changing. slowly improving ourselves, changing our habits and things like that. So it's okay not to feel regret over the regrets, but rather learning from this. So when we are able to stay with the present moment for a long time, the mind settles down, the hindrances starts to go down, and then we experience our mind as rapture. That is the piti. And when mind has piti, we are fully, into the mind, and we let go of our concern to the body. So the body starts to disappear. That is the tranquility of the body. Kaya passaddhi just comes naturally. You don't have to exert any will. And it feels really nice when the body starts to vanish. And then that gets reflected into the mind as sukha or pleasure, right, in the mind. And from that, sukhino chittang samadhyati, the mind enters deep meditation. So you can see the direct relationship of why the way you live your life, that is your virtue, so important, so very important, is a foundation for deep meditation. So this is why this is really important. And it's good news too, right? It's not anything difficult, really. We can refine ourselves. We can find ways to improve ourselves. And the results are straight away. Because when you speak nicely, kindly, truthfully, how do you feel? Straight away, you feel nice, right? When you give a compliment to somebody, you feel nice. When you share some Dhamma with somebody, you feel great. Yeah. So it's immediate. The effects are immediate and very, very nice, pleasurable, joyful, blissful even. So that is why also one of the qualities of the Dhamma is sanditthiko. It's apparent here and now. You don't have to wait till you die to experience that joy. The moment you engage with these wisdom teachings, you get results straight away. That's also how you get confidence. Yes, these things are true. They make sense. I can experience, I can apply them, and I can see it working. So this is why. So when you live life well with virtue, you actually bear fruits straight away. Even if you're not that concerned about getting enlightened yet, never mind, your quality of your life improves. Yeah. Who doesn't want this, right? We all want to improve the quality of our life, to live happy, to live peacefully, to live with energy, with good health, and all of these things. So virtue is really, really directly related to these things. But it is also important to remember not to tenaciously hold on to our virtue in the way that pride grows, right? Like that thinking that I am a really virtuous person, but these other people, they are scallywags and look down upon other people, right? That's not our job. Just look at whatever good they do, whatever bad they do, that's their business. Their karma will take care of that. So not to build up pride as a result of virtue, then it is also defilement. So this is where in the Karaniya Metta Sutta, there are two qualities called ujucha and suujucha. So uju means straight and upright. And the next one says more straight and more upright, suujucha. But the Buddha is never superfluous in the way he gives his teaching. So it doesn't mean that two different things in that it's more of the same, but it's rather, uju means that you have virtue, that you are an upright, straightforward person. But suuju means that you don't hold on to your virtue in a way that pride grows or defilements grow. Important factor, right? It's important that we take care of that. Otherwise, that also defiles our mind. So important to remember that. Another thing that I want to share before I end this talk is maybe remind people of certain stories and things that I say from near-death experience, people who have had near-death experiences. So the full near-death experiences, if they have had, they usually say, almost everybody pretty much, when they have their whole life review, they see themselves as a third person, like a movie star or a actor or actress in your own life's movie, and you're watching. But at that time, all your justifications are gone. You really know what you did, why you did, and how you did. And you know that you did it yourself. So it goes for both good things and bad things. So don't worry, whatever it is. So when you see it, right, and the vast majority of your life is your life with your people you meet every day, like your family, people at work, or people who travel with you, the people around you. How do you deal with them? How do you talk to them? What are your actions with them? What do you think about these things, people? That is a large portion of your life, and you see it. Yeah, you see it. It's not just the individual acts, they too matter, but also as you see, you know. But the very interesting thing, they all say that you also know how the other person felt when you spoke, when you did these acts. So it'll be interesting for me, right? Or for Dhamma teachers sometimes. We think, oh, we just gave a really, very just normal Dhamma talk. But at the time of our death, we might realize, wow, that Dhamma talk, that one person made a big difference, that made a change to their life. And you would know that. And not only Dhamma teachers, you too. Sometimes you help people, you give some good advice, and you think that was pretty ordinary. But you might see, wow, that time that I told these things, that was nothing much. But it changed somebody's life for the better. They had a big shift and they started going in the right direction, right? And you will have so much joy at that time and as you die. But at the same time, like if you've said things that have really, hurt and harmed somebody quite badly, you'll know that too. So it'll balance out, hopefully. And more good you do, the better it is. So all these people who have had near-death experiences, they are never the same person. Every single one of them has a changed life. The one big change they all have is they all become extremely virtuous. Right? This is research done over 40 years of thousands of people, and they say all of these people, they realize people are more important than getting things done. How you treat other people becomes really important, right? So that's virtue. The importance of virtue becomes because you feel not good at the time of death if you have conducted yourself in the wrong way. And that's bad, right? That's affects you and your next life, where you're going to go. So this is why it is, because very importantly for your own very benefit. You are the one who benefits from your own virtue, right? Not the other people. They benefit too when you're a kind person, good person, truthful person, non-harming. You give everybody else harmlessness. What a beautiful gift to give everybody in a world that there's so much harm. I don't know. I was getting a ride because that's why I'm now at our vihara in the suburbs. So I was coming from the monastery. On my way, I was having a ride. The people were telling me some things. I felt I wasn't sure whether I had was good to hear, but anyway, in a way, it's good reflection about what goes on in the world, and they were relating to me about Sri Lanka and some people who are revealing quite a lot of torture and things that has been happening in the country during the time of the war and other civil wars and things like that, and the hurt and harm people do to other people and all of these things. And you wonder, my goodness, people live in fear. We are sometimes really, really lucky sometimes if we have not come across this kind of ways, have seen or heard or we are close to these kinds of dangers. But it's not the case for many people in the world. It's not just in Sri Lanka. everywhere in the world. I mean, Australia is reasonably good, but even then, even at family level, sometimes people live in fear because there's harm, there's hurt, and distrust, even with your own family members. Trust is broken with your, parents. It's not an easy life then. So how wonderful it is if we can, live in a way that we give life, we give harmlessness, fearlessness to other people who are around us. So such a beautiful gift. So that is why that is really important. And so also these people realize how important it is. They realize when they come back, they have things to do, they have things to resolve. So all those things, whatever harm they have done, big or small, they know that they have to deal with them, make amendments, say sorry, ask for forgiveness, give forgiveness, all of these things, and settle those businesses. So it is not a small thing. Yeah, it really is a big thing. So virtue or sila is really, really important. Yeah, so that's all I shall say for the Dhamma talk. You are all welcome to unmute and ask a question or put it onto chat. It is a simple topic, but not so simple, but also it's a reminder, right? The reminder is really important, even though we know to get reminded of ourselves that how important or how easy it is to lose it, how easy it is for us to, increase our tone of voice or to shout or say something, or even a white lie. Sometimes even a small lie isn't really helpful. If you can, avoiding it and finding other ways to deal with it is really important. So if nobody's asking questions, I also want to say something really important. It comes with sila, because sometimes people feel very oppressed in the wrong way, or because of their tenaciously holding on to the sila, they also do the wrong thing sometimes. Because there are times, because the sila virtue is much bigger than just the precepts. But because of the precepts, sometimes you hold on to the precept, but sometimes much more harm can happen. But this has to be very, very careful. I'm almost a bit concerned about saying this, but it is also important to say this so you have a perspective. So this I learned at one of the global Buddhist conferences, and I heard this from Ajahn Brahm. This is where there are times that we may have to bend our precepts in the skillful way. It is to be done with a lot of care when it is absolutely necessary, when the bigger cause is for much better benefit. So I'm going to give a couple of examples of these things so that you get an understanding when to do it. So one occasion, right? So because abortion, for example, is taking life, right? So many women in the world can't forgive themselves for whatever reason. If they had to have an abortion, they feel really bad. So, but it is not helpful. So we need to sometimes understand why we did it, what we did it. Sometimes we might have to do it. So if you have a very challenging, very difficult situation where you want to keep the precept, but at the same time, it's really difficult. So here is a scenario, a real life situation, I think. There was one woman pregnant with twins, and quite late pregnancy, very late in the pregnancy, there was a complication. So the gynecologist advised, if they abort one of the babies, then the other baby and the mother would live. But if they don't abort one baby, there is a very big chance all three of them would die. Complicated, right? So both sides, there's going to be deaths, one or three. But of course, no guarantee. You don't know exactly because you can't predict the future completely. Now, what do you do? Because once you get that information, if you don't take an action, also it's like killing, right? because you've been warned by the specialist saying if you don't, the mother could also die together with the babies. So these kinds of dilemmas happen to people. There are many occasions when you have to make this decision. So these are the times then you have to check 4 things. So these are called 4 agatis. Raga, dosa, moha, baya. So you first of all check that whatever decision I take, is it coming from selfish desire to fulfill some kind of desire, strong desire? Or is it coming from generosity, openness of the heart? Second one, is it coming from ill will, negativity, hate? Or is it coming from kindness, compassion, to save life, to support? So that's dosa. Moha, is it coming from stupidity? So this is when you have to do the research. So for this mother and father, they might have to get second, third, fourth, or fifth opinions from few other specialists to say whether they all think the same. Find out all the information. Is there other ways that you can deal with it? Is there a way to help or do something else? So having done all of that, then you can make an informed decision, right? Not just without anything. So with other things as well. Have you spoken to wise people? Have you done the research? Have you found out all the information about this and making a very informed decision? And then bhaya, are you doing it out of fear, sheer fear? Are you because you're frightened because of somebody? Is that the reason for you to do it? So if it is not, if you're doing it out of, bravery and courage, coming from having investigated everything, so coming from wisdom, coming from compassion, kindness, generosity of the heart, not selfishness, then it is okay. I mean, it still will have some consequence, but they are called gray kind of karma. So it's not really dark. So you make the gray much more lighter shade, yeah, as much as possible. But these are the times, sometimes you might have to bend a precept. So not to take it lightly, not to take it all the time. So, but if it is to really save life, that kind of situation, those are the times. Sometimes it may be necessary. Second story also I want to say, and this is a time where there was a husband and a wife, and the husband had a serious illness and he had to go under surgery. And the surgeon had said this kind of sickness and this kind of surgery, you only have 50% chance of surviving. 50% of the people would die during the surgery. But of course, what can you do if you don't do it also? You don't know. So there is quite a thing, but you go for surgery. So this husband, this man, was in a room in the hospital. He was sharing a room with another patient who had exactly the same condition. And during the day or two that they were there together getting ready for the operation, they became quite good friends. As you do, sometimes you talk and you get to know the people. And then this friend had his surgery first. So he went before this guy, and the next was him. So before he was going into his surgery, he asked his wife, so how did my friend do? Was he okay? By this time, the wife knew that the friend has actually died during the surgery. He's just died. And her husband was now going into the surgery. And she didn't feel good to give the bad news. What a kind of a mind state his husband would go, and he could also die during the surgery. But it's not a nice mind state to go with sadness of losing your friend, but also fear what will happen to you. It's not nice. So the wife decided, they were devout Buddhists keeping their sila, but it was really difficult. But she lied. She said, oh, he's fine. He's now recovering in the ICU, this area. He's doing really well. So that was a lie. So the husband went in, he had his operation, he actually didn't die, he survived. And later, the wife was still upset about it. Of course, she told him after he'd been okay what happened. Then they came to Ajahn Brahm to make the confession because she was feeling really bad to have said that lie. So this is when Ajahn Brahm really congratulated her, saying, "You did the right thing at that time, because that was to save life, but not to take this lightly, not encouraging vitalize at all, not for daily small things, not at all, right? So these are for like life-saving kind of situations. So you have to be very, very careful. But then that's why I said you have to check those four things. And only having done all those four things very carefully, there are times you might have to do this. But be very, very stringent, strict with yourself. But sometimes it is the right thing to do, but you have to be very careful. So I just wanted to share that just to balance out and to show you that how you keep your sila, yeah, and why you keep your sila, and the correct way to go about this.